We welcome Dwight Evans to the show. Dwight, the book is out that you did with Eric Sherman. Dewey is the name of it. I'll hold it up. We'll also show it full. It is such a great read for anyone who is a Red Sox fan, anyone who wants to relive some of the great years and some of the great moments. Dewey, Behind the Gold Glove. Right out of the gate, I thought there was one issue. It should be Behind the Gold Gloves, because there were many, but that's fine. I won't argue over the title. But first of all, I just want to ask, and you kind of do expose yourself. You bare your soul a little bit. You talk about a lot that you and your family dealt with off the field, as well as the great moments on the field. Take us through the inspiration. Why get involved in this project, and what were you hoping that this story, this message, your journey might do to help other people?
Well, I had a conversation in Florida with the pastor of our church, and he's written 21 books, and he kept telling me, he said, you gotta write a book. I said, I don't have the energy to do that. I don't want to tell the side of the story that is personal and what have you. It was not an easy book to read or write, and it's an easy book to read, but it's not an easy book to write because there's a lot of issues in there that brings back a lot of memories that we lived through and not too many people knew about. So when I finally got the message that I need to write a book, we had Eric Sherman come into my life a long time ago, and we started talking, and it's been a work of over 3 years. So I think it's got more than just, it's not just about baseball. It's stories within baseball, yes, and regular life goes on and what have you. So it was time. It was time, and I'm a pretty private person, but Eric asked the right questions and hit me at the right time, and I'm proud of this book.
As you should be. It's a wonderful read. You said you're a private person, and that becomes evident so quickly in the book, right? The first words of the book are Jim Rice never knew. And talking about one of your closest teammates all those years together, he had no idea what you were dealing with, what your wife Susan was dealing with, your sons Timothy and Justin, and their health issues. How were you able to perform as you did at what we believe is a Hall of Fame level? Because you should be in the Hall of Fame. And we're not going to ask you to say that. We're going to say it over and over as we have for many years. But how were you able, and you talk about this in the book, but take us through that compartmentalization, right? Learning to go to the ballpark and do your job at such an excellent level while still having time and enough of yourself to give to your family.
Not easy, but I had it a lot easier than Susan. I'd be at the hospital, and Tim would just get out of surgery, or Justin, and I could go to the ballpark, and as soon as I drove through those gates at the ballpark, I was in like a safety zone, a free zone, and I could escape. And I played long enough, played 20 years, so I played long enough to that I could develop that. And when I'd pull out, I could get in the game, get my head in the game, and I could move away from the situation, the personal part. And when the game was over and I'd drive back out through those gates, there it was. And I'd be back at the hospital and it'd be all over again. But Susan never had that opportunity. She never had we didn't have family. All our family was on the West Coast, and we just didn't have support system. So she is really the big reason why I wrote this book too.
Yeah, I thought that it was extraordinary to get this very transparent window into your family's life through the course of your playing career, and the fact that this is not this was not a glamorous portrayal of what an athletic career looked like. This was you were very you shared pain and difficulty, but also joy. But I wonder, the process of going through this book and being able to talk about your family's health history, the health challenges that both Timothy and Justin faced, and the difficulty that Susan faced as the spouse when you were away, and the difficulty that your daughter faced at times, feeling like she was getting an imbalance of attention. How much did you go through this? How much were you looking? Was this a project where you were looking back at your career and saying, I would have done this differently, or I wish that I had understood what I was going through at the time? Like it's to your credit that you were able to compartmentalize at the park. How much were you examining? Like, did I do this the right way? And if so, how did you come out of that examination?
Well, that's a tough question, but a good question. I always felt that I could have been a better father. This game, if you're going to be any kind of an athlete at all and a good one, you have to dedicate yourself. You just don't show up at batting practice. There's a lot of work. I mean, I used to work out every day, and I'd always hit extra. I'd always do things to tune my game up to be the best that I could be. For instance, Jim Rice, we played together 16 years. And Fred Lynn, and we played together 7 years, all three of us. They never took extra batting practice. And not because of any of the reasons. They were that good that they didn't need to take extra. I always, and Yaz was the same way I was. And we always had to hit extra. We always had to feel something and do something. So it was a dedication. And it takes time away from your family. But my wife understood that. And again, I never would have had the career I had if I hadn't had a wife like Susan, who would meet me on the road and just show up. We'd be in Seattle and get to Anaheim. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I put that, card in the door, and the door opens up. It's Susan, and I loved that. And she knew that I didn't like being away from the family, especially during those times. But she made it tolerable for me. The last 8 years, she would do that, and we also had a little money, because early in the career, I mean, we didn't have any money, so we could afford to do that, and made my career, the length of it, go on. So, and she was responsible for that.
Yeah, there were so many cool aspects of the book, I think, in terms of, like, you mentioned, you mentioned the different financial circumstances of your career, right? Like, your career spanned the advent of free agency, and yet there's this also really cool undercurrent, and you just mentioned some of your longtime teammates, people who you consider close friends, whether Yaz or Jim Rice or Fred Lynn, who you played with for so long. It's like it is so remarkable to think of the group with whom you arrived in the big leagues in the early to mid 70s, and the fact that you and Jim Rice were both on both the 1975 and the 1986 World Series teams that experienced so much success, but also heartbreak in its own right together. How much did you appreciate the uniqueness of the era and the organization for whom you were playing, and the fact that you had these friendships that could form over the course of more than a decade together? In the case of you and at the least several years together when it came to guys like Fisk and Yaz and Fred Lynn.
Yeah, we had a lot of great teammates that played a while with Fisk and Burleson, and can go on and on with that. But those times, you didn't really realize it at the time you're playing. You're playing to win, and that's what we tried to do. And the one thing about Jimmy, here he was in 75, and it's the last series of the season, and he gets hit in the wrist by Vern Rule in Detroit, breaks his wrist, or his part of his hand, and I couldn't play in the World Series. So that was sad. I always was thinking, what would it have been like if we had a healthy Jim Rice playing in that World Series? What would have happened? We lost that World Series in the final game, bloop single in the 8th inning off of Joe Morgan's bat that was the deciding factor. So what would it have been like if we had Jim Rice? I don't know. I would like to think that it wouldn't have been a contest. But I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. And Yaz always said it, and I agree with him. The biggest regret I have is not bringing a world championship to Boston while we played. And to see them do it in 04 and be part of the organization, I was so thrilled. People would come up to me and say, "Are you jealous about?" I said, "Why? They did it. We didn't get it done. They got it done." And not only got it done then in 07, 13, and 18, it just was magical. So great to be part of the organization.
You talk about the 1975 World Series, and Peter Gammons has written about the moment where Pete Rose looks up at you and says, "This might be the greatest game I've ever played in." And you say in the book that it's in real time. As it's you're thinking, "My gosh, Pete Rose just said that to me." Like, wait, did you understand the? Yeah, did you understand the greatness of that moment, of that game, like in real time, or are you just so grinding? I mean, you make the catch that any one of us lucky enough to watch the Red Sox in the mid to late 70s tried to replicate in our backyard with wiffle balls, and we all rolled our ankles and fell trying to do what you did in a World Series game. Like, when did it dawn on you that you were playing in what might have been at that point, the greatest game in World Series history?
It dawned on me the sixth game of the World Series, and about the later in the game, and I'm on third base, and there's Pete Rose, and who I had a great deal of respect for, and he comes up to me and he's looking. He says, "Dewey, can you believe I'm 23 years old?" And I'm going, "I don't." He says, "This is probably the greatest game I've ever played in, and can you imagine what we're doing right now?" And I kind of look around the stadium, going, "Wow, he's right. He's right. This is a really magical moment, and I'm a part of it." So, and it comes out to be still rated the best World Series and best game in World Series time. So, didn't realize that at the time, no, but there was a select few, 25 guys that were able to go through that, and it was a pleasure, real pleasure to be in it. It was. Even though we lost, it's hard to lose. I always look at it as a bride's groom, and I hated being a bride's groom in baseball. We were also in '86 the same way. It hurts. It hurts, especially the way we lost them.